Hey y'all, it's Heel Heat time.
Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and this is another episode of Wednesday Wrestling Wrap Up, where we cover everything from Lucha Underground, Ring of Honor, NXT, and TNA. Basically the wrestling shows that come on Wednesday nights or are scheduled to on Wednesday nights. Let's jump right into it. The first thing we're going to talk about, the negatives of these four shows. First match I want to talk on is Baron Corbin versus Tucker Knight. Corbin picks up the win in a squash match. At this point with Baron Corbin, we need to see more from him. We've done the squash match route. He's done some competitive matches. I know he's not that evolved as an in-ring talent, and if he isn't, then don't put him on my TV. They have a whole WWE Performance Center to train these guys and make them better. Yes, he has a presence. Yes, he has a future. Yes, I think he's still young and he has a lot of development he can do. I just don't need to see the Baron Corbin squash match. We've already went down that road. We've already did this. It's in this day and era of wrestling, it's not what's going to fly as compelling television. Next up, Hernandez versus Drago from Lucha Underground. Both of these guys, Drago especially, I enjoy on a personal level. Hernandez I've been a fan for a while. I think he's an underrated big man. I think there's a lot he could do that a lot of other guys of his size couldn't even fathom to try and do. Drago is someone that since the Lucha Underground promotion started, has stuck out and has made an impression on me. I'll be perfectly honest. Lucha Libre or Mexican wrestling, out of all the wrestling in the world, it's probably the wrestling I'm least exposed to. I watch more of American wrestling and English wrestling, and definitely American and Japanese are the two I watch most. English wrestling I get a lot more of. Unfortunately, Mexican wrestling I just don't get a lot of. First off, there's a language barrier, and second off, their style's a little bit different, and it's not what I enjoy. So Drago is someone I'm relatively new to since the Lucha Underground start, but he's been one of the high points and one of the people that has stood out as a superstar. Unfortunately, this match was a little substandard for both men. Ended up with Hernandez getting a DQ when he couldn't beat Drago. I don't know. I'm really not okay with the big menacing guy getting a DQ over the smaller guy. It just was weird and just didn't click for me. Now, coming from that, we're going to go into our worst match of the night. The worst match, in my opinion, comes from the land of TNA. We have the Beatdown Clan, consisting of MVP, Hernandez again, and I'm sorry, I'm really not trying to pick on him, Kenny King and Low-Key versus Drew Galloway, Eli Drake, and Micah. The Revolution, or not the Revolution, the Rising, I'm sorry. Revolution's James Storm's group. It's hard to keep track of TNA, they keep too many groups. Anyway, this was an elimination match. The team that loses has to disband. The Rising ends up losing. To me, it fell flat. Again, it fell flat. There was too much going on, too short of a match for this style, not enough hype for it. This is something that should happen on a pay-per-view, a group being forced to disband. And I understand that TNA's model is now more going for what's on TV than what they put on pay-per-view. But still, in my opinion, this should be a main event at least, and it's the first match of the show. There's no interest given to it. Yes, we've had the feud, but now we see Galloway's group disbanded and MVP continue to possibly have power. But I don't know. It just didn't. It didn't do anything for me. Again, for the type of match it was, it didn't have the relevancy, the importance given to it that it should, and it didn't have the time given to it that something of this nature should. A 7-person elimination match should get a ample amount of time, not be a spot fest where people are hitting their move and then either getting eliminated or pinned. But anyway, coming off of that, we're going to go into our question of the week. Now, the question of the week from last week is, out of the 4 promotions being covered, NXT, the sub-promotion of WWE, Lucha Underground, TNA, or Ring of Honor, what is your favorite promotion? Got some answers from our friends here. First is from my good friend and mentor and one of the most intelligent wrestling minds of all time, a legend in the wrestling business. And if you don't know this man, or you don't know this man's work, really look him up. He's a legendary, legendary person, and I don't say that much. I consider him a good friend. I consider him someone that, if I need knowledge, I go to. But anyway, enough blowing smoke. My friend Freddie Fargo first. Favorite promotion? Ring of Honor. Notice your jaw didn't drop on that. It sure didn't, Freddie. And we've talked about this before, and I'll get into it in a minute when I talk about my favorite promotion. Next up's our friend Rain Lazy 92. Currently, I like what TNA is doing with their matches and their feuds. I can definitely agree with that. And last but not least, our friend Christian from Chile. My favorite show right now is Lucha Underground because every wrestler have a personality and a story behind them. And awesome gimmicks like Mil Muertes. They have the best wrestlers from AAA, the Indies, and free agents like Mundo, who is Johnny Mundo. I definitely agree. Lucha Underground has that, and like I just said, they've opened up eyes of people, even someone like myself, who is a rabid wrestling fan, didn't watch much Mexican wrestling. They've opened my eyes to some of the great superstars of Mexican wrestling, like Drago, like Mil Muertes that he just mentioned, the different people, Aerostar, Sexy Star, Phoenix, Pentagon Jr. There's a lot of guys, and there's one I'll mention later that I want to get into when I get to that point, that have really caught my eye from this promotion. And I agree. My personal favorite is Ring of Honor. It's been my favorite promotion for a while. The quality of Ring of Honor matches since their inception in 2002, it's astounding the turnover that the roster in Ring of Honor has, and their ability to keep moving on and evolving and changing and staying ahead of the curve. I mean, if you think about it, they've had guys come and go through there like Christopher Daniels, who's there right now, Bryan Danielson, a.k.a. Daniel Bryan, CM Punk, Samoa Joe, Austin Aries. I mean, Tyler Black, who is now Seth Rollins, when you read the list of names that have come and gone through Ring of Honor, it reads as a who's who in professional wrestling. Kevin Owens, Kevin Steen, the American Wolves, the Wolves in TNA. Literally, it is the breeding ground for the best professional wrestling in North America. They have the best matches. They have the most coherent storylines, in my opinion. They have their storylines are very simplistic. And it's, I don't like you because you did this, period. You're a bad guy, or you're the champion, I want to be champion, period. Everything's easy. Even something like what they're doing right now with Colby Corino and the Decade being a young boy for them and teasing Steve Corino coming from the announce table. Simplistic, draws you in, makes it work. They allow what happens in the professional wrestling ring be the story. Not what happens in the wrestling ring be a product of what the story is. The story is what happens in the ring. Everything that happens before that should be setting up that story. The wrestling is the art form. That's what we want to see. And that's why I prefer Ring of Honor. Now, coming from that, of the 4 shows and the 4 different promotions on Wednesday nights, in your opinion, our question of the week for next week, or this week actually, is what is your favorite theme song of these 4 promotions? Could be for anybody, could be for a show itself. Let me know what you think. Hit me up on Twitter, hit me up on Facebook. Put it down where? Down in the comments. Make sure when you're commenting, you hit like and share as well. Get this out there for everybody. Now, coming off of that, we're going to jump right into the positives. First up, The Addiction. Daniels and Kazarian versus Okada and Gato. Just a great match. 4 great wrestlers. If you're not familiar with Okada, Okada is one of the 5 or maybe 5 or top 10 wrestlers in the world. Just a great, great wrestler from New Japan Pro Wrestling. Gato is probably one of the best tag team wrestlers and a great singles wrestler on his own. To me, I know him more, and I'm more of a fan of his tag team work. He's morphed more into a manager role with Okada. However, he will team with him, as we see here. The Addiction pick up the win in what is a fantastic match between the 2 teams, in my opinion. Next up, another tag team match from the land of NXT. We have Finn Balor and Samoa Joe versus Kevin Owens and Rhino. A good match tying together a couple different feuds. Owens seems to be feuding with both Balor and Samoa Joe. Rhino has his things he was doing with Balor. Ties the 2 together. Ends up with Balor getting a pin off of Kevin Owens, leading into Saturday's July 4th Tokyo special, which should be a great show, by the way. I kind of like it. I like the way that it wasn't just Balor defeating Kevin Owens cleanly. It took a little bit of Rhino attack, hitting the gore on Owens on accident. Balor knocking Rhino into Owens. It took more than just a normal beating would to beat the champion, which it should. Someone as important as highly built up as Kevin Owens has been shouldn't be easy to beat. You should have to go through that, which I enjoyed what they did with this, and I thought it was an excellent tag team match with Finn Balor and Samoa Joe winning. Next up, from the land of Lucha Underground, Delavar Daivari versus Tejano Jr. I mentioned earlier I was going to speak of someone that I really enjoy. Tejano's a guy that, out of all the AAA I have watched, I've really been impressed with. I think he's an absolute star. He showed it in this match. Daivari's a guy more known to the American audiences. He's been in TNA, he's been in Ring of Honor, he's been in WWE. He's been everywhere. Tejano Jr. comes out and shows why he's at a different class than Delavar Daivari. Not a knock on Daivari, but Tejano puts himself in a different class, in the upper echelon of what we have in Lucha Underground. Up there with Alberto El Patron, Prince Puma, Johnny Mundo. Even puts himself on the world stage as one of the best wrestlers on the world. And I thought this was a great match, showing exactly what he could do. With him picking up the win, of course. Next up, we have from the land of TNA, the Wolves versus the Dirty Heels in an Iron Man match. How can you go wrong with this? Eddie Edwards and Davey Richards versus Austin Aries and Bobby Roode, wrestling for 30 minutes straight. That's really all I have to say about it. It was fantastic. It was enjoyable. It was fun. It was professional wrestling. The Wolves pick up the win, squeak it out at the end. Just an amazing match. This is what TNA could be. This is how good TNA should be. Just a great, fantastic match. Fun for everybody watching. Fun part of the show. Awesome. Speaking of awesome, we have our next match from the land of TNA. Awesome Kong versus Brooke versus Taryn Terrell. 3-way for the TNA Knockouts title. Another great match. Another thing that's always set TNA apart is the women's wrestling they have there. Some of the best women's wrestling in the world over the last decade has happened in the TNA rings. This did not disappoint. Taryn picks up the win. Again, continuing on with her heel faction with the Dollhouse. To me, she's been super entertaining. I think the Dollhouse is one of my favorite things in all of professional wrestling right now. I love the whole gimmick. I love what they're doing with it. I love this match. It was great. It was fun all the way around. And last but not least, in our positive matches, this one almost won match of the night. Ethan Carter III versus Kurt Angle. Ethan Carter picks up the win. Kudos to TNA. You give this guy who's got a build, who's starting to come up, who's a younger guy. He's not really known as a WWE retread, although he comes from WWE developmental to TNA. This is a guy that's basically a homegrown talent there. He's someone that they took that was nothing in the WWE, that didn't even really scratch TV often, turned him into a superstar, made him one of the top heels in wrestling, and now he's got to a level where he beats Kurt Angle. I mean, I thought it was amazing. I thought it worked perfectly. I thought you have the going away babyface losing, or not going away, but going away with the babyface losing to the up-and-coming heel. I thought it was great. I thought it helped to build this kid EC3 to be one of their guys that's a building block for TNA going forward. I thought it was awesome. Now, coming off of that, we're going to go into our promo of the night. We didn't have much in the sense of traditional in-ring promos, so what I'm going with on this is the third part on the series from NXT on Finn Balor and his rise to being Finn Balor. I thought it was excellent. I thought the fact that they haven't schmozzed over his runs in Europe, him being Prince Devitt, they even mention it. His run in New Japan, you know, even showing guys from New Japan wrestling with him wrestling in New Japan and insane championship wrestling in different places all across the world to show how he got to be Finn Balor. This was an excellent piece. All three were excellent. All three show a very compelling story about a very compelling wrestler, whether you know him as Prince Devitt or Finn Balor. Another one of those guys that's in the upper echelon of wrestling, one of the great wrestlers in the world. Just a guy that, the sky's the limit for this kid. He could easily main event the next 5 WrestleManias. In my honest opinion, I think he's that good. I think he has that much talent, that much charisma, that he should be one of the focal points of the WWE going forward. Now, coming off of that, we're going to go into our match of the night. Not surprisingly, from the land of Ring of Honor, Adam Cole versus AJ Styles. No-brainer. A little bit better, in my opinion, in EC3 versus Kurt Angle for the reason that AJ Styles is on such a different plateau than every other wrestler in the world. Even Adam Cole, who is a great, great wrestler. Another one of those guys that's in the top 10 in the world. AJ Styles is on such a plateau right now. His game has evolved to where AJ Styles right now, since he's left TNA, and this is no knock on TNA, this is pumping up AJ Styles. He has evolved and made his game, AJ Styles in the wrestling ring right now is as great as any wrestler has ever been inside that professional wrestling ring. As good as Buddy Rogers, as good as Ric Flair, as good as anybody you want to bring up when that bell hits, to when that bell sounds at the end. AJ Styles in ring right now is just as good as anybody's ever been. And he's amazing me. For a guy that for the last 15 years has been talked about as one of the best wrestlers in the world and always in that conversation, he has taken himself and has distanced himself to where it's AJ Styles and then there's everybody else. There is no one in the world, even Kevin Owens, who I love and I think is one of the great heels in wrestling, probably my favorite wrestler in the world. AJ Styles is just on a different level. And then fortunately for us, we get to see him wrestle in Ring of Honor, where they allow him to do that and allow him to become what he is. Now, coming from that, last but not least, our show of the night, not surprisingly, Ring of Honor once again put on another great show, another fun show highlighting the Ring of Honor roster and the New Japan Pro Wrestling roster. Just all in all, a good Wednesday night for wrestling. All 4 shows delivered. I thought they all were good. I thought they all gave good, had good storylines, had great matches. It was just a fun night to be a wrestling fan. But basically, that's all I have to say on that. My name is George, and this has been another episode of Wednesday Wrestling Wrap-Up.